welcome. Raising Your Game today. I'm David Levin. This is our Friday episode, so we're talking all things intergame. Tuesdays are for sports and sports parenting. Fridays are for everything and everyone. Welcome. So how are you today? How are things with your intergame? Feeling good, I hope. Maybe stressed out, worried, I hope not. What's going on for you? For me, things are again good. Another good week. My goodness, lucky, happy me. Nothing special, really, just normal life. Hot weather. That's a little weird, though, of course, nothing like what people are dealing with down south. Maybe you heard the water in Florida is over 100 degrees. Ocean water. That is truly insane. But here in my head, things are nice and cool. That's funny. All right, so some things to talk about today. My ups and downs, of course, for the week. The case for maybe breaking some rules now and then. The coming Trump, that's easy for me to say, the coming Trump January 6th indictment. The Florida slavery curriculum, that crazy mess. We'll talk about one of the foundations of raising your inner game and how helpful that is. Dopamine addiction and the increasing problems around that. We will, of course, have to talk about the Barbie movie, how great that is, also how stupid some of the reactions to it are, and some great legal podcasts I enjoy. All right, so we'll start with ups and downs. What things were lifting me up this past week and what things were pulling me down, making life harder. In the ups column for me this week, I have to say the Barbie movie. My goodness, what a phenomenon that is. I'll talk more about it later, but we went to see it this week, and it really did lift me up in a bunch of ways. It was fun and funny and smart and fun to talk about later. Just really a great lift. Loved it. In the downs this week, not a lot, but I have to say some of the reaction on the right to the Barbie movie was just depressing. I mean, they're probably trolling. I have a hard time believing they actually mean it, that movie was somehow offensive or threatening or evil or a bad influence. I mean, come on, people, lighten up. And by the way, did it occur to you that being a man and feeling threatened by this just proves how accurate the commentary in the movie is? Seriously. But even that, if they're just trolling, that depresses me too. I saw it as a super smart, funny, sharp, playful look at ourselves and a real benefit to think about those things. For certain people to be so predictably stupid about it, it just bums me out. So much outrage, so much victimhood, so much poor me, so little human understanding. Just tired of it. But overall, that is just a little fly in my otherwise sunny pink Barbie ointment. All right, so those are my ups and downs this week. I hope you are having a lovely week. Next up, our quote of the week. All right, our quote of the week. This week we'll hear from the great Katharine Hepburn. Katharine Hepburn was an actress, huge star, movie star, mostly in the mid-20th century, known for being strong, independent, funny, smart, speaking of Barbie land. Her quote, and you can hear all of that in it, is, "If you obey all the rules, you miss all the fun." If you obey all the rules, you miss all the fun. How can you not love that? Especially, again, think about what it was like for women in this country in the mid-20th century. Not to say it's perfect now, of course, but it was much worse then. I remember my grandmother, during World War II, was in medical school, on the path to being a doctor. When the war ended, the men came home, they kicked her out. Literally kicked her out of medical school. Sorry, the men are back. We don't need women doctors anymore. For real. Can you imagine? Anyway, Katharine Hepburn was great, and I love this quote. If you obey all the rules, you miss all the fun. You should still obey most of the rules. You can still be responsible and sensitive and all those good things, but it's also important to have fun and be real and live life. And if that means breaking a rule here and there, that is okay. So that's our quote of the week. If you obey all the rules, you miss all the fun. Think about that. Think about what boundaries you might want to push a bit and we'll move on to our top stories. All right, top stories. I'm a little torn this week. It sounds like the latest and certainly biggest Trump indictment, this one for trying to overturn the election, could drop today. That's obviously the biggest news and something I would want to talk about. I'm really looking forward to seeing the actual indictment for that. So far, Jack Smith seems to be doing a great job of putting forward things that are basically rock solid. Very little chance of not being convicted. So I'm just excited to finally see some real accountability for that. And we get so used to all the craziness from Trump, but just to reflect on the reality of this for a moment, a sitting president in this country did everything in his power to overturn the results of an election, to stop the peaceful transfer of power, which has been a bedrock of our country from the beginning. He tried to keep that from happening so he could stay in power. He lost the election. The people expressed their will, as they do in a democracy. He said, fuck that, I'm staying. Let's see if we can steal this thing. You just can't wrap your head around it. So that's what this latest indictment will be about, and it really couldn't be a bigger deal, obviously. But it's not out yet. We don't know the specifics, so there's not that much to say, especially since I don't really know what I'm talking about, right? Not a lawyer. I will say this. I sure do love having all the smart lawyers I listen to available on their podcasts. My goodness. Cafe Insider, Sisters-in-Law, Talking Feds. It's so helpful to hear smart people who are experts talking through these issues. So that's great. But that's my first news item. Of course, I'm also just disgusted with the talk out of Florida this week and their new curriculum that is apparently required to point out that slaves picked up valuable skills from their lives as slaves, like blacksmithing, for example. So I guess slavery wasn't all that bad after all. I just cannot understand how people can be so stupid. I really can't. What are they afraid of? Who do they think they are protecting? And from what? How is this progress? What do they tell their children? I just don't get it. But I could also go down a rabbit hole with that I'm not sure would be all that helpful for either you or me. So I guess that's enough about the news this week. Mostly still waiting for the big indictment. Always plenty of things to be angry or depressed about if you want. All right, that's it for Top Stories. Next up, Inner Game Gold. All right, so these are the ideas and concepts I come back to over and over to help me stay on track. This week, I want to think about one of the foundations of raising your inner game, which is this statement: you have thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. Or, as my dad said to me so many years ago, if you want to know who you are, you're the one who hears the thoughts in your head. I'm thinking about this one because I have another new coaching student this week. He's just getting started. One of the first exercises in the course is, one of the first things we say in the course, because it's a foundation, is the idea that you are separate from the levels, meaning the thoughts and emotions and impulses that arise in our mind come from somewhere else. They're not actually you. Again, you have thoughts, but you're not your thoughts. So the exercise for the first chapter says, how clear is this idea to you that you are separate from the levels? And what's really cool is it's not at all uncommon for a student to say, I'm not sure about that right now. Not sure I totally get that. But by the time they finish the course, they totally get it every time. This is great for a couple of reasons. One, until we see this, we see the dual nature of our inner world. We really don't see it. I mean, that sounds obvious, but we can hear it, hear the idea, we can understand the concept, but we don't see and feel the reality of it, so it's not real to us. All these thoughts and emotions are just who we are. We're not separate from them, and they tend to control us. But once we do see and feel the reality of this, you have thoughts, but you're not your thoughts. You are the one who hears them. It really does change everything. And it just takes a little bit of focused work to get there. The difference with our students at that first exercise compared to just a couple weeks later is not that big. They've just done a few things to see the idea in action, to see it in their own lives. But every time they end up getting it, and it transforms their mental game. So anyway, this is just a super helpful idea to reflect on. You have thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. You're the one who hears them. That is our inner game gold for this week. All right, next up, raise your outer game. So this is where we talk about the things we care about in our outer life, our health, our relationships, our finances. This week I want to talk about addiction, but not in the way we normally think about this. It's not drugs or alcohol, not the typical sort of substance addiction. This is our own brain chemistry and behaviors. And by the way, this comes totally from a podcast I'm listening to this week. It's from the NPR series, Hidden Brain. The guest is Anna Lembke. She's a professor of psychiatry at Stanford, has a book called Dopamine Nation. I'll link to it in the notes, of course. She makes a very interesting case about the nature of addiction in our modern world. And it's basically all about the mechanism of dopamine rewards in our brain and how our modern life is basically designed to be addictive. So on the one hand, it was a relief to hear because it was pretty clear that the habits I worry about in myself have not reached that level, at least not yet, at least not most of them. The stories she tells about people's behaviors as they go farther along that path of their addiction is just amazing and heartbreaking, really. But again, it's not drug seeking in the classic sense, it's dopamine seeking. They start out doing something, just simple things that bring us pleasure in totally normal and apparently healthy ways. Shopping, reading, nothing you'd be at all concerned about. But when they get into a dopamine-seeking loop, it can turn into truly destructive behavior. It's wild, really. So nothing I'm doing now is anywhere near that level. By the way, of course, the two things I'm thinking about, for me, you know about already if you listen to the show, Coke Zero and checking the news. So on the one hand, it's good to know they're not nearly as bad as they could be, but I can also see how they could get worse. In both cases, the more I do, the more I want. And that's sort of a sign of it. And the news is actually probably the bigger problem, at least in the context of her work. I can definitely feel, as I'm scrolling through the news for the 10th time in a day, that I'm just desperately seeking dopamine, that little hit of finding something interesting, something I needed to know about. At the same time, I honestly don't think either of them would take over like some of these stories. I just don't think I would let it happen. I'm aware of these kind of things already. I think about them a lot. I know how to get control of them. These kinds of behaviors are already a topic in our family as well. If someone saw something, they would mention it. So I'm not really concerned about it getting truly out of control for myself, but it's still worth keeping an eye on and stepping back from it now and then to regain some space, regain some control, some normal balance, dopamine balance. I do worry a bit about our kids as they get more and more freedom to make their own choices. The good news there is they're also very aware of the concerns. They grew up with limited devices, which really helped them sort of anchor normalcy. And we'll have them both listen to this podcast, by the way. Peter is clearly addicted in this way to his scrolling phone apps and has been for a while. It's not out of control. I think it's honestly pretty typical, and he's aware of it, but he's heading off to college soon, and we won't be there to, see it and help. I'm not 100% confident he'll be able to manage it on his own, but we'll see. A little bit of worry there. For you, I definitely recommend checking out this podcast. You'll know if there are any areas of concern for you and your family, but I just think it's super smart and really required now to know about this, understand how this all works, and be on the lookout for it. She had a powerful line. She said, if you're not addicted yet, it's coming soon to a website near you. Think about that. You're going to get hooked. All these apps in the modern attention economy are literally designed to trigger this dopamine mechanism and get us spending as much time as possible on the app. So it's here. It's a real danger in many ways. It ruined the lives of the people she talks about. It's just incredible. And it's probably only going to continue to get worse. That's a nice thought. But that is our Raise Your Outer Game for this week. Check out this podcast, learn about dopamine addiction, and let's start to give it the attention it deserves. All right, next up, our Charging Station Challenge. Okay, our challenge for the week. Last week we reflected on the quote, "Courage is the price that life extracts for peace." This week, I think we have to work on this addiction issue. And the best first step is to listen to this show. And there are 2 parts. I haven't listened to the second one yet, but check the link in the show notes, give it a listen. And then if you're willing to share, post the things you're addicted to in the community. Mine are Coke Zero and Checking the News. What are yours? Okay, that's it for this week's challenge. The Charging Station Challenge. Next up, highly recommended. All right, these are the things I'm either crazy about right now or just reviewing. And we have quite a few items this week. First is the podcast I mentioned. I've already said enough about that. And it's our official challenge this week, so I'm sure you will rush out and listen to that immediately, right? I will also list all the legal podcasts I mentioned. I enjoy every one of them. Very happy to have them available. Would really miss it if I didn't have them to listen to. The next is the Barbie movie. I think you need to see it if you haven't already. Again, it's a surprisingly subversive movie. All this sharp, funny commentary wrapped in this pretty candy-colored package. It's a very interesting movie and super fun. How can you not want to do that? I'm also loving the Threads app. You've probably heard about this. I quit Twitter a while ago, and to be honest, I've missed it. I've tried other things. They're okay, but Threads feels like the real deal. I'm very happy to have that. The problem is, it is an especially powerful scrolling app that's also very newsy, so it's perfectly targeted at my dopamine weakness. I can already feel like it's having that effect on me. I'm doing a lot of scrolling on there, so I'll have to watch out for that. And so why am I recommending that to you? That's a good question. I trust you to manage it well, and I'm happy to have it. Another fun one, and this is on Threads now that I think about it, at least where I'm finding it, but The Onion, which if you don't know is a satirical news site. They write fake headlines and stories. They're just hilarious. Truly laugh out loud for me, which doesn't happen very often. And it's actually a nice thing to have to counter the heaviness of the news, so I'm really enjoying that too. Definitely recommend you check that out, The Onion, wherever you can find that. I assume directly online, whatever other kind of social media app you might have access to, they probably post there too, but I'm enjoying it on Threads. And those are my recommendations for this week. Quite a good list. I hope you enjoy those. And that's it for this week's show. If you like what you heard, please do tell your friends and family, your in-laws, your co-workers, second cousins, especially those, I think, they're family, right? Invite them to join us and rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. That's how new people find the show and get the mental health charge, the boost we all need. If you play sports and want to boost your mental game, or you have kids in sports, check out our Mental Game Starter Kit. It's a great set of resources to help anyone take their mental game to the next level. You go to raiseyourinnergame.com, scroll to the bottom, you can learn about it and register there. All free, as usual. Super helpful resources, they really are. If you'd like to support the show so we can keep things ad-free, please click the Buy Me a Coffee link below, and thank you for that. For more mental game goodness, please join our free community, the Raise Your Inner Game Charging Station. There's a lot of good stuff there. You can connect with others. It's really great. So click the link. Again, totally free. You'll love that. Also, if you're listening to this on audio, but you like video, we post all our episodes on our YouTube channel. There's a link to that in the show notes. And finally, we will close, as always, with Leo Tolstoy, again from the Raise Your Inner Game book. He says, the ultimate purpose in life is to serve humanity. And that's what we're doing. We're serving the people in our lives. It's super important. So keep up the good work, and we'll see you next time.